Good evening, everybody. System Chalk here with the 118th episode of our first run through the House of Light expansion to Book of Hours. First run on YouTube, that is. I'm playing as the archaeologist, and we are looking for... sorry, I've got a couple of pop-ups that just came up. Okay, sorry about that. But yes, we just finished the salon. We are clearing out the remaining memories here, and we've just read our first Newman text. However, above all, we have finished the affair of the god in the wood. So Lieselotte, we'll just read the entries here. So Lieselotte has been exalting willing humans with the implantation of larval Blomberende kind. The authorities' investigation of her health camp has forced her to close, but with Father Stanislav's help, and perhaps that of Hush House, the scheme will continue. Lieselotte, Laturian director, dietitian, ally of the Blomberende kind, has installed her Landgravines in exile in the Hush House beehive. Return this card to Stanislav in the God in the Wood node. So, bid Lieselotte farewell. Stanislav is ready to take her somewhere safe. The librarian may allow her access to the beehive at Hush House first, or may just send her on her way. Lieselotte is gone. The Blomberende kind remain in the Brancourt beehive, both grateful and quiescent. So I don't think that changes anything for Schaller. We have another bittersweet certainty, which will be inconvenient. I have an inkling. And Lieselotte departing. Lieselotte has been exalting willing humans with the implantation of the larval Blomberende kind. The authorities' investigation of her health camp had forced her to close, but with Father Stanislav's help, the scheme will continue. For now, it remains in hibernation at Hush House. Okay, so let's take some... We'll take stock. I think probably because I've got Schaller here, maybe I will talk to him about a book as well, and we can get a Spintria for our trouble. But the real question that I'm running into today is how do I navigate the Tree of Wisdom? So it turns out there's actually two sections of my tablet. There's one that I normally look at, then there's another one where I wrote it earlier, and so I occasionally go by. But I did actually work out some like low-level like memory or like skills to work with for illumination. So we had Ericapan and Crack Tracker already in there. So basically everything's level 3 and higher. So the options here were Purifications and Exaltations, Watchman's Paradoxes, Applebright Euphonies, and Meniscate Reflections. Now the catch here is that Applebright Euphonies, Meniscate Reflections, and Watchman's Paradoxes may be at a higher level. Yeah, that's at 3. So I'm probably setting myself up for heartache, but what I'm going to do is I think I'll put in the Watchman's Paradoxes. So if we say, actually I'll write these down. So if I say Watchman's Paradoxes is at 3, and then Purifications and Exaltations is at 5. One obvious question here would be, do I have any books that would push that even further? I don't think so, but... Nope, we do. Okay. So maybe what we say here is that Purifications and Exaltations is the very top of the list. So then the job is we do a race between Applebright Euphonies and Meniscate Reflections to see how high we can get those. So I'm going to stick to leveling up Purifications and Exaltations, but I think it's kind of clear what my next few goals should be in terms of the remaining memories. Okay, so with that in mind, if we take Purifications and Exaltations, it would seem to me that there's some like low-hanging fruit that we can handle in terms of leveling this up. The real question is, how do I break this up in a way that I can maximize my memories while also okay, so we'll use 2 Shapt for glass blowing and vessel crafting. And then I guess that means that we'll... Well, yeah, sorry. Purifications and Exaltations is the easiest one for me to handle, because if I don't do any... Like, if I don't use a Fost, I just simply don't level it up. Okay. So, if I want to go all in on Purifications and Exaltations, that will mean I need 3 and then 4. So 7 memories in total, which we have. And then glass blowing and vessel crafting would be 4 and 5, so that would be 9. So this is just purely for the sake of argument, I'm not actually committing it this way, so yeah, okay. So we have a shot for sure. The best bet for me right now would be obviously the music would be the easiest for well, actually for both of these, so we'll get all of that right away. The Pale Desk, I'm really reluctant to use the Whist here, so let's go for the health. Wait a minute. Don't I have a... Yeah, single foot songs. Now, I am very happy to use the FET in this case. So that would be Intimations of Skin. On to the reading room. Now, Trist might be nice to go to Crowcross Sands, but we have sort of other priorities right now. I believe I'm used up as far as music goes, but there's definitely other things that we can follow up on. So, for instance, like Bittersweet Certainty, but we'll hold off on that for now. Stolen Secrets doesn't do a whole lot, but well, in the sense that we may get that from Mr. Kill, but if I do Matters and Deeds of Serpents, I can at least get a knock for glass blowing and vessel crafting. If I go, and here we'll use the Shapt. Salt for sure. The moon doesn't help me with contradiction, but the sky will from... I'm trying to remember how far we went on these, but let's say Letters from a Fugitive. And then I guess the pattern also helps. Getting a little more delicate now. Fortunately, we only have one more location. Any one of these could potentially be a duplicate. I'm going to do Deaths and Their Evasions just because Stolen Secrets tends to come up a little less often. And then I guess I don't have... I used up all the desks, so I don't really have anything to catalog with, but I think this is a decent enough start for now. And then we're basically going to abandon crafting for today. Right, the skill is now level 4. Its power aspects have also increased. So we had a plan for quenchings and quellings. Arts which quench fires and bring solace to the troubled mind. A true adept is never troubled by fire, nor by fever, nor by restless spirit. Safety in oblivion. Let the flesh forget disease. Let the smoke forget the flame. Let the troubled mind forget its pain. Preservation. Would have been nice if I had something ready to go for purifications and exaltations, but them's the breaks. Okay, so at this point we just need to give him Solomon's preparation. I can offer my assistants something to drink. This will increase their aspects. They'll also be glad of the refreshment. So if I can, I'd kind of like to get Mr. Kill generating memories sooner rather than later, but I think it's important to make sure that he has what he needs to do that before I start putting him on the cycle, because I know I'm going to want to talk to Schaller today as well. Okay, we're going to turn that straight back into Swaddled Thunder. Aha, I'm one short. Well, that's inconvenient. If I do one of these, I can put the mop and bucket in. And now I get to keep my storm. Or alternatively, the real purpose of it would be I now have another tool that I can give to someone like Mrs. Kill on another stormy day to be able to open up the heart rooms. Alright, down to the Grushians. This has boosted their aspects appropriately. So again, priority is going to be to talk with Mr. Kill first for memory generation. The Instruments of the Heart. Sister Isabel, then precentress of the Abbey Church of St. Brendan's, engages in dialogues with a heartlong of a kind called Dwendrazon, which has taken partial possession of her body. The Dwendrazon, like all its kind, usually dwells in the Mansis, but can enter the physical world by manifesting as music and take possession of a willing or semi-willing mortal who hears and loves that music, like Isabella. Isabella records her dreams of the High Mansis, where she is accorded the Dwendrazon status and titles. In return, the Dwendrazon enjoys what it calls Sejura, a welcome oblivion. Our mostly blessing is that we may never cease, except in Sejure. There is something more that Isabella refers to as the Sejura Magna, but she laments that her Dwendrazon will not tell her exactly what that might be. Alright, Singlefoot songs. Father Stanislav John Schaller, priest and diplomat, writes of his time on the slopes of Huashan near the Grove of Green Immortals, but never too near. Schaller's relations with the Grove are cautious. It's a library of the tree, but under the hand of the hour named Applebright. In time, however, Schaller comes to be more sympathetic to the Applebright, which he suggests causes harm only when so invited. The Singlefoots of the title are one-horned, one-footed hill things with sweet but powerful voices, powerful enough to open the mountain. The Singlefoot sometimes trample pilgrims, sometimes heal them, sometimes coerce them to enter the mountain and become Singlefoots. Schaller explains that when he found this last becoming too tempting, he decided to return to his homeland. The Intimations of Skin, fiendishly complex, weirdly distorted illustrations of Congress and anatomy by the haunted visionary painter Niels Frederick Malsker. Malsker illuminates the evolutions of the names of the Grail with unfortunate clarity. It seems that a lovely who consumes an ivory becomes an ivory, a lovely who consumes a thirstly becomes a thirstly, a lovely who consumes a name of another hour might take its place. In the penultimate illustration, a lovely grapples with a fungoid knot that can only be a name of the crown growth. The lovely's mouth and other portals gape wide, and the growth name is already partially engulfed, but it seems that Malsker couldn't bring himself to illustrate the result, and the final illustration is only a scrawled bloated obscurity, which seems a little ridiculous for me to be reading that again so soon after the last one, except that we have Deaths of the Moon, a historical tract on various forms of survival after death. When the heart no longer beats, the grail may keep the spirit in the body, and an appetite is indicated to sustain. Alukites are the best known, but not the only of this nature. This is the waning moon mode. The full moon mode is the intensification of one element of the soul to the point where ordinary sustention is unstable. Our protector, the generous of hosts, began of this nature, and its generosity remains ungentle. It is possible for the body's health or the heart's core to outpace the other elements, so that a static mode becomes impossible and growth proceeds in dramatic stages until balance remanifests. Letters from a Fugitive. Lars Westergren, explorer and murderer, spent 7 years escaping justice through his knowledge of byways and shortcuts in the bounds. Throughout that time, he wrote regularly to his daughter, possibly in part to taunt his pursuers. A year with the Legion de Sul, patrolling the bounds, until he deserts. A month in the Priory of Captains in Morbihan. 7 days, or so he claims, in Ye's Behind the Wave. Cornered at last by his pursuers, Westergren writes that he will attempt the paths of the sun. He doesn't seem sanguine about his chances, and indeed, this is his last letter. An editor's note adds that Westergren's whereabouts or end remain unknown, although he was supposedly sighted at the Christmas market in Vienna, the negotiations between invisible underworld figures that happen each year there in 1929. On the Matter and Deeds of Serpents. This was probably the Prophecies of the Naga rendered into English and illustrated by William Midnight in Paris in the 1880s, but it shows a number of divergences from that text. It's certainly quite recent by the standards of VAC texts. The Serpent Folk are called the Great Hooded Princes. The Serpent Folk called the Great Hooded Princes came to know the order called the House of Leith and warred across the miles with them. They made an alliance with the Mother of Ants, whose children they had been. The text describes how the Great Hooded Princes escaped, or will escape, from the Fifth History, where they had died, or were doomed to die. They engaged in a secret conquest of the land of the Great River, called India in some histories, and have ensured that all other conquests of that land are false conquests. The Other Eye of the Serpent, in which the Hesiarch Signifer attempts to resolve certain mysteries of lightning. Signifer considers lightning to be the division, the connection, the joined serpent. The serpent's eye is said to be the sun, but as the division and connection, it must have a second eye. Signifer considers and rejects 3 times the hypothesis that the moon is the serpent's other eye, insisting that it and the sun do not share a nature. This, as much as the serpent business, is what got him burned by the church. He proposes that the serpent's teeth are towers, that the serpent's mouth is a gate, that the serpent is the devourer of Ys, and therefore that the serpent's other eye is amber. And finally, Deaths and Their Evasions. Father Stanislav John Schaller writes of the means and limitation of passage between the orders of the Mansis. No long names, hours. Unusually, Father John has written this book in Fusine, for, he says, especial secrecy. He speaks very cautiously of the exceptions that can sometimes be made to the edicts of Chancel and Calyptra, and hints at the means by which he successfully returned a lantern long to flesh. Schaller mentions most cautiously of all that he has been permitted to see a book that speaks more deeply on the matter, but that it was surrendered into the shadow of a covenant stone of the Watchman's Tree. It can be retrieved if the 99th wink is reserved under the edict's liminal. Okay, so we have a bunch of work that we need to do, so I'm going to get those sorted first, and then we're going to... I have a rough memory in terms of what we're going to use these memories for. So I've decided what I'm going to do is I'm going to take care of glass blowing and vessel crafting first, because that's actually going to require the most effort on my part. So we'll use the knock-only things first, so that's going to be the Stolen Secret, the Secret Threshold, the Salt, and then we need to use... oh, and the Pattern. So this is nice, right? Because we know that all of these elements we can still use towards the next level of glass blowing and vessel crafting, but we can also regenerate all of these. So here we can use a tryst. Yeah, so we'll use the Secret Threshold. We have another health to work with, so take advantage of that. I guess we kind of need to use... we need to use the same memories and then generate another one. Okay, where were we? Pattern. Well, Salt and Pattern, but... This one I want to leave aside. And I'm doing that because I want to start applying some of these towards cataloging. So the reason why I'm kind of jumping the gun a little bit on the cataloging is because I do see some value in knowing what other skill, like, so some of these are eventually going, some of these books may be things that will decide whether I commit something to the Tree of Wisdoms or not. So knowing those a little bit earlier will help me out there. At the cost, of course, of using up a desk that otherwise could have been generating a memory. I think in the name of... You know, if I use all of these... Yeah, if I use all of these, I can actually bring back glass... Ah, shucks. But then all those knocks are useless to me. Okay, well, I'll live with the dubious decision that I made. Now, you know what? We'll roll the dice. Let's see what we'll see what the day brings. Because I can also use the inescapable confinement to level up the glass blowing and vessel crafting as well. Okay. I'll add this to the... It seemed for a moment like I was going to be getting the shelves back, but obviously I'm going to have to be filing a few things away. Of course, I expect that we'll be making some decent progress through this shelf as well in the next day or two. I don't think the gossip helps me in this case. The skill is now level 5. Its power aspects have also increased. Now, I don't want to waste the time, so I am going to level up purifications and exaltations. That's partly just because I know I should have... Yeah, I should have some spares left over. So I'll use the Savage Hymn, the Cheerful Ditty, and the Confounding So I'm trying to minimize the duplication of books that I read a whole lot, but I don't want to sabotage the run either. The Geminiad Volume 2. So that gives us pentiments and precursors. So under normal circumstances, that would go on the list here, although it is getting a bit crowded. And we have the Devoured Tantra, which has... Oh, that's very timely. Applebright Euphonies. It gives me 1 Applebright Euphonies, which means that I can make that my level 3 for the Illumination. Unless I already committed something to that, but I don't think I did. Alright, very welcome. Also, if I'm not mistaken... that may not give me a beguiling melody. We'll see. Either way, I'm very happy about that development. Yes, I can still restore this. It is winter and the storms have tightened the seas. I am sitting before the fire and the sweet bones of the beef and potato pasty in one hand and a hot ale posset in the other. Fear doesn't do that much for me, but again, we're getting the bonuses now. Mr. Kill's already got his 12 winter. Alright. The skill is now level 4. Its power aspects have also increased. Here we go. So we did just read on the Matters and Deeds of Serpents, so I'm going to skip over that one. We also did that with Deaths and Their Evasions. To a Pale Lady, a collection of Franklin Bancroft's letters to Ava de Wolf. There is a substantial body of erotic pleading and half-finished poetry, but also learned discursions on matters mythical and marine, as well as notes towards a comic opera on which Franklin and Avra were apparently collaborating. Do not return, O my light, to the sea. None of us can be what we were. That is history's curse. None of us know what we may be. That is history's gift. Your mothers and the mothers of your mothers are caught in eternity's jaws like a robe hem in a trap. It is the pearl that shines, but the tide that returns. The Raptures of Forculus, the first volume of Abbot Jeffrey's hypothetical theological debates in the Socratic mode. If Janus were an hour, Forculus might be counted among his names, but that door remains closed, and so Forculus is not. Jeffrey discusses the signs that mark doors, which might permit or forbid access to certain thoughts and dreams, speculating carefully on which of the sanctioned hours might teach or govern each sign. Okay, so we need one more memory on top of those to level up glass blowing and vessel crafting. We'll grab. So at this point, the Cheerful Ditty's the most likely candidate. Apply the shot. At last, I'm something of an authority in this. Improve the skill to level 6. So basically, the remainder of the memories that I need are all going to be Lantern and Sky. And ideally, actually, sorry, I've already leveled it up, so really we just need to worry about 4. Now where I can, I'd like to prioritize, so we'll set the Faust aside here. I'm going to try setting aside the Health and the Whist. Yeah, but then I have to give up my plans for the Metal. That may still work, though. What else do I need? Well, I have 3, so... Okay, so we use this to level up Purifications and Exaltations. We use this to make Solomon's Preparation. We use this to do Gardening. So the Gardening is the one that I'm probably most willing to give up. Well, let's commit the stuff that... Again, I'm going to try and thread the needle. So I'm trying to focus on here are things that will accept... So I think anything that takes the shaft also potentially takes the metal, which is the problem. So I just need 2 more. Well, in this case, yeah, we're definitely going to have to give up the health then. So Savage Hymn is next. Let me make sure I didn't just mess this up. So 1, 2, 3, 4. All right, we're good. Now, finally, we'll take the Whist, Sights and Sensations, and we'll make another Solomon's Preparation. And I'll just double check. I don't see... Yeah, so metal doesn't work here, but it will work at Ava's desk because of the edge. And of course, after talking with Mr. Kill, I'm going to wind up with some, like, solace or something like that, but... I think maybe it wouldn't be a bad idea for me to maybe talk with Father Schaller now. Dead men don't tell no bloody tales. Well, who'd listen? So we'll get Mr. Kill queued up to work on the Wormnod kitchen. This kitchen has clearly been penetrated and polluted by worms, the parasites of the sun. The worms are long gone, but the kitchen will need scouring. It will need decontaminating, and then it will definitely need all of its food throwing out, even if it's tinned. Now, I'm slightly curious. Old material. Father Schaller has already consulted... Oh, right, sorry, I already gave that to him. Bless you and bless the house you serve. So, if I can give him a low-level nectar book. There we go. 3 flowers hath the tree. Suitable reading. My visitor has horticultural interests. The answers can be found in my collection. Now I have an idea of this book's nature and its content. So door and wall, I believe we've already committed. We have. So that's going to be another spare one for the list. Just Verse, a rare surviving... Okay, this was the Allopoly collection. A rare surviving copy of Christopher Allopoly's notoriously unsuccessful volume of experimental poetry published in 1912. We've not yet committed preliminary meter, so that probably counts as something to go into the collection here, and pretty early on. And Colors in the Liver, Ilse Bischof's most controversial film, blamed for outbreaks of cannibalistic killings in Tiflis and Leipzig. And that's kind of a free one for us. And finally, the skill is now level 6. Its power aspects have also increased. So, we're not quite there in terms of leveling up all of the skills, but I think it's pretty clear in terms of what the remainder of the day looks like. So in 30 seconds, I'm actually going to make a note for that for myself here, just because this is the sort of thing I will kick myself for forgetting to do early next week. Wait for MEMS +1. Okay. So yeah, the priority for today is going to be to level up purifications and exaltations. Now, what that really is about is freeing up my choices for the rest of the winter. So we're in a nice spot with the Sights and Sensations, because it's very easy now for me to make Solomon's Preparation, which means that it's going to be relatively easy for me to move throughout the house. So for instance, even something like the Charred Chamber, I don't actually need to wait for a snowfall for that, because I can just use the Wormwood Dream and we're ready to go. And in fact, maybe I don't even need to use the Wormwood Dream. Maybe I feel like using an Escapable Confinement, because it's only one it's really only 1 point of winter less, right? So however I decide to cut it, it's really going to be more about dollar values that keep me from bringing in Mr. Kill than anything else. I should also note, because I have that knock aspect, we also don't have quite the same pressure to use Sacrament Ascite, which means we could potentially go and open up the trapped cell with Reverend Timothy, and I think, yeah, the Rustling Stair has actually we've got a couple of scales. So yeah, the having access to Inescapable Confinement potentially opens up a lot more unlocks for me. Now again, there's sort of there's a bit of a roll of the dice in terms of what I want to do. So my biggest guide here has been to consider all of these books that I'm either buying or bringing in or otherwise not following up on. So there is a bit of a wait for me to deal with these before I try and do anything, before I try to unlock other parts of the house. But again, you never quite know how the day is going to go, if the weather turns a certain way. Well, actually, the weather isn't quite as relevant if I'm going to use the Newman, but between either the the weather going a certain way in terms of the rooms that aren't going to be, basically rooms that don't have knock scale or winter. I'm not opposed to taking advantage of those opportunities. It's just at this point, I think there's a little bit more value in me going through the books, especially because we've actually got a pretty good game plan in terms of how that leveling up works. So I think we've got a couple of levels of illuminations dealt with now. And then I can see maybe a little bit more preservation going as well. And on that basis, especially once I start getting constrained, so if there's really only like 3 levels of, say, preservation for me to go with, so I don't know, like 5, 6, or 7, or whatever it winds up being, it becomes quite a bit easier just based on how far down the list. So for instance, just verse, like let's say for whatever reason I knew I needed preliminal meter to get to 7. I don't actually know where I want to put preliminal meter, but just as an example. Well, then just verse is perfect because that'll give me 1 memory. On the other hand, if I say, oh, edict's liminal, right? I need to put that, that's got to be a level 9 one. Well, again, I want to read this book because I will get multiple memories out of that. So basically, for the things that are going to be lower level, I want to deal with these early, and of course they're the easiest ones for me to handle, so I'll give them a small bump and then we move on. And then for the ones that are a little bit further down on this list, we know we'll be getting more memories, which means I can put them higher up the branch of the Tree of Wisdoms, which ultimately means it's a little bit easier for me to fill out the tree. Or, if nothing else, if we do wind up with, a bit of a weird, we just get unlucky, and let's say as soon as I commit edict's inviolable, right? Let's just say I put that into 3 for whatever reason. And then I get a whole bunch of books which give me edict's inviolable. What I can then do is like, okay, well, in that case, they now go into this collection here, which I've been deliberately ignoring, so that when the time comes for me to sort of fill in some gaps which haven't been, I haven't been able to get a lucky break with the books for, these are going to be the sorts of things that I use to fill those in. And I've been reluctant to use them just simply because the more of these I have piled up, the more likely they're going to have the aspect that I need. Although, again, just to be clear, I've got a lot of books which haven't been read yet, so I don't need to hoard too much. Anyways, we'll see whether or not all of that talking actually gets implemented the way I planned when Monday rolls along. Thank you very much for watching. I will see you next week as we continue on our probably skill-based journey through Hush House. Take care.